Okay, next we're going to talk about the voice section. The default setting of the voice section is monophonic, and everything you've heard me do thus far has been in the monophonic mode. That is basically one note at a time, all three oscillators put through whatever combination of filters and through a single VCA controlled primarily by a single envelope, although we could have done differently, but we haven't yet. We haven't gotten to envelopes yet. So basically you've heard this thing in monophonic mode the whole time. But let's remember that it is not limited to monophonic mode. Even if it was, I mean, it'd be great. This is a great monophonic synthesizer, but we can do a lot more with the Arturia MatrixBrute. It's also a polyphonic synthesizer. So right now I just have oscillator 1 coming out with a saw, and that's it. But when we put it into what Arturia calls paraphonic, we're going to get a totally different experience. Woo! Let's turn that down a little bit. Anyway, what you're hearing is 3 notes at a time. And yes, okay, I know you're probably sitting there going, hey, Mark, doesn't that say paraphonic? Now, if you know me, and you probably do, you've probably had to put up with this 1,000 times, but I have to be very clear. Monophonic, duophonic, polyphonic. These terms all describe how many notes play at a time. That's what they're for. They describe how many notes. How those notes are articulated is a different thing. Paraphonic is a descriptive term to describe a situation where all of the voices are directed through a single filter and a single amp controlled by a single envelope. That is what paraphonic means. So I don't want to talk about articulation, and you'll understand why in a minute, because it's very confusing. So that's why I'm talking about this being currently polyphonic. It is literally and accurately 3-note polyphony right now. And that's cool. All of a sudden you can play chords on your monophonic synth. All of a sudden you're not bound to just be playing leads or basses or weird sound effects. All of a sudden you could be in there, just... No, I'm not going to do it, but you could do it. So yeah, you can be playing chords, and that is incredible. But we're going to take this one step further, and this is magic. This is how synthesis should have been all along. Why do we want to play chords where all of the voices in the chords have the same oscillator setting, the same frequency settings? I mean, that's not a synthesizer. That's an organ or a piano. With synthesis, we have the ability to define individual timbres for our notes, or we should. And historically, we really haven't, except for with things like the Monopoly. The Korg Monopoly there. Okay, we can do that with the Arturia MatrixBrute. We don't have to have a sawtooth wave for each of these voices. We could have a sawtooth with ultrasaw, for the first note. We could have a triangle with metalizer for the second note, and a square wave for the third note. How about that? And why are we settling for these same octave settings? Let's give them different frequencies. There, oscillator 2 and oscillator 3 are now totally different. You hear that really cool little jumping around that's going on? I'm playing very mechanically, so it sounds kind of mechanical. One of my favorite things ever. The digital scanner in this keyboard is trying to assign each note to an oscillator, and it's doing that by when each note happens. So unless you play absolutely perfectly the same every single time, you're going to get different voices, different notes that you play going to different oscillators. And it creates these cool little melodies that occur as the oscillators jump around, and you have them at different timbres, so you can hear them jumping around. It makes so much cooler things going on. So you can do that, and that is one of my favorite things to do with this particular arrangement, of which synths are starting to feature more and more often. You can do really interesting things in songs without going, just retreading the same old polyphonic synth sound that we've been doing since 1978. or 77. Maybe 76. Anyway, the point of the matter is this synthesizer can do polyphony, 3-note polyphony. That's plenty of polyphony for a synth player, especially if you're in a band and you're just playing. And it's super awesome, and you could create really great synth sounds. I'm kind of fooling around here. Let's listen to a decent synth sound. What was it? I think N15. Really cool stuff can come out of this. I mean, this is it's a type of polyphony that should have been pursued before now, and I'm hoping everybody runs with it and it starts popping up in all kinds of music because it's really a great synthesizer application, and you can do it with this synthesizer. Okay, so let's go back to my sound. And now we have to come to grips with the paraphonic problem. Okay, paraphonic means, like I said, all voices through a single filter, single amp, controlled by a single envelope. Even if we add a different envelope, it's still going to be the same problem, and that is when you play different notes, those notes are not articulated, whether that is by timbre or amplitude. However, that's not what's going on here, because look, first of all, we don't have to put all three of these oscillators through both filters at the same time. What if oscillator 1 went through the Steiner filter, oscillator 2 went through the ladder filter, and oscillator 3 went through the ladder filter? Let's listen just to oscillator 1. Let's give it a crazy sound. We'll give it a bandpass sound. Okay, that's a pretty distinctive sound, right? Okay, let's go down to these other sounds and hear what they're doing. Why don't I play a B diminished to do it? Because that'd be really cool. Let's do a 12 decibel per octave Moog filter sound. Okay, that's different enough from our initial sound, so let's put them all together. Already, we've got two voices going through one filter, another voice going through a different filter. Currently, they're both controlled by one envelope, but we don't have to do that, do we? No, because we have the matrix. So let's keep the envelope that is up here. Let's keep envelope 1 controlling the Steiner, and then let's go down here and apply, we'll turn the envelope off in the ladder filter, and we'll apply envelope 3 to the ladder filter. So now, what are we doing, people? Think about it. This is no longer paraphonic at all, because two of the voices are going through one filter, another voice is going through a different filter. Both of them are controlled by different envelopes. We're totally destroying the concept of paraphonic here, and I'm going to take it one step further, where everything just falls completely apart, because I realized something about this setup when I first was examining, well, actually when I was recently examining this column over here, the assignable part of the matrix. I was told if you can assign these assignable columns to pretty much anything that has a knob or a slider. And I was like, well, hey, doesn't the mixer have knobs? The volumes of these individual oscillators, they have knobs. That means they can be individually modulated. So what happens then if you assign the assignable columns to the mixer volumes and then modulate them with 3 individual envelopes? Well, let's see. We'll take 13. We'll assign it to VCO1. There. We'll take 14. We'll assign it to VCO2. 15. Assign it to VCO3. Now these 3 columns, whatever we modulate, whatever modulation source we apply to them is going to modulate them. So if we put envelope 1 here, give it some juice. Envelope 2 here, give it some juice. Envelope 3 here, give it some juice. Let's just see what happens. Oh, it doesn't sound any different, really. Okay, well, that's because we have to turn these volumes down. So it's starting at 0. Now, you can hear individual voices. Here, let's... That one's not very loud. Let's give it something a little louder here. Okay, so basically what we have going on here is if we change up these envelope settings, we can hear that different things are happening here. You can hear that these different envelopes are controlling, and actually one envelope is currently still controlling the ladder filter as well. We can take that out just to stop the confusion. What is happening is, like I said, the 3 envelopes are individually controlling the 3 amplitudes of the mixer, which totally destroys it. This is almost completely articulated polyphony, except for we're missing one filter because 2 oscillators have to share a filter. And one other thing, which you may have noticed, I didn't mess with envelope 2. Envelope 2 is hardwired to the VCA. So whatever you change envelope 2 to be, it is going to affect the outcome of the sound overall, because everything's still going to go back through how envelope 2 is controlling the VCA. So whatever oscillator you apply VCA, whatever oscillator you apply envelope 2 to needs to have the envelope you want the overall sound to have. So if you have really long attacks, in one of the envelopes, it's better to just have an arrangement like this, where it's just the sustain up and the release up. So you have time to hear those swells occur independently and everything. So it's not entirely perfectly articulated polyphony, but it's also nowhere near paraphonic. So it's one of the great things about the synthesizer are the really unique and interesting things you can do with the polyphony. It's really, I haven't even tapped close what you could do polyphonically with a synthesizer. It's amazing. So it's your responsibility to get out there and explore this polyphony and do cool new things with it so we can get away from just the standard synthesizer polyphony model.